You ready to film another exciting episode of Real Good at Doing Stuff?
I can't wait.
Gotta be more exciting for TV
I
show.
can't wait.
Okay, good. There we go. All right, real good stuff doers. It's time for another unbelievably exciting episode of Real Good at Doing Stuff. First, before we get started, you guys have been buying my shirts. I really, really appreciate that. This is a pretty small little YouTube channel. I don't make much money off of YouTube at all, and it helps when you guys buy t-shirts, for sure. So if you appreciate the channel, that's a good way of helping out, and I appreciate it. The newest stuff is our Big Nasty Cams t-shirt, and our new, this is a favorite, Kamala Anderson. So if you like either one of those, well, actually you can't buy this one because this one's mine, but you can buy one just like it, and that would be rad of you. But anyhow, today we're going to do tech again. Sometimes I'm on the fence about doing tech because the truth is not as many people watch it. I think the guys that appreciate it, but generally speaking, viewership's down from it because it's not nothing blowing up and fire and nothing. It's just kind of boring, I guess, to a lot of people. But anyhow, today we're going to talk about the cardinal rule of turbocharging. And when I'm talking about turbocharging today, I'm talking about turbocharging in the drag race sense. If you're road racing or racing boats or something, this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about drag racing turbocharged engines. The most important thing that you have to do this before any other thing, and this is where most people get in trouble with the turbo car, but they don't have to. If you watch this video, maybe we can help you out with that. So if you ever noticed, I've said 1,000,000 times, and I'll say it another 1,000,000 times before it's all over with, that the difference between turbocharging and supercharging, any idiot can make a ton of power with a turbo, right? The trick with turbocharging is controlling the turbo, right? With supercharging, in my opinion, the tune can be a little more tricky in some cases, because the O2 can get sketchy with zoomies and there can be complications with that. But the power management is much more simple, which is why that you see so many people successful with blower motors. Generally speaking, they're managed with timing, and the timing works unbelievably well for those things. Now we can do that with turbocharging too, but it can lead to complications, right? But the biggest difference that we're going to talk about today with the cardinal rule of turbocharging is this is a problem that happens in turbocharging but not in supercharging, and that's the starting line, right? We're going to come up on a two-step, let's say 4,000 or whatever RPM we're trying to leave at, and in a turbo car, we got to build boost to our target boost level, whatever that may be. With a supercharged car, generally speaking, I'm not going to get into little weird tangents here, but generally speaking, that boost is kind of predetermined, right? When you leave at 4,000, it's going to have X amount of boost, and it's going to do that every time, right? So if you want more boost, you got to leave more RPM and vice versa. And like I say, it's going to do that every time. So because of that, it's almost impossible to screw that part of it up, right? But with a turbo, that's not the case at all. And you've probably seen a million times where people, maybe they switch from nitrous or whatever to a turbo, and they just have a fit, right? They can't get the thing sorted out, and they're not very successful with it. Like I say, anybody can make a bunch of power with it, but they can't be a successful drag racer with it. There's two different things, right? And the cardinal rule of turbocharging is you need to be able to go to the starting line and generate however much boost you want to generate exactly every time. That's the rule, right? Now, a good thing about this rule is you don't even need a drag strip to work on this. All you need is a parking lot, your driveway, whatever. So you can spool and play with things and get this right. But until you get it right, in my opinion, you have no business going to the racetrack. You're going to waste your time, waste your tires, waste your fuel, waste your motor, waste everything, right? And this is something I see all the time, that people don't have this figured out, right? So we're going to look at some data here so that you can see what I'm talking about. All right, this is an example of a car that I was dealing with recently. Guy goes to the track. Now, if you look here, he comes up. This thing takes 3 seconds to get up on the chip. He leaves in 4.5, right? Here he is. He's stuttering at, say, 45 or so. He's got a lot, all right? But if you look here, the blue line, that's his boost. And that is really, well, the problem is, so he leaves the line. Let's see what, here we go. 13.7 pounds of boost. Well, if you'll notice that it's still on its way up when he lets off the button. When it's on the chip down here, we got 7.6, and double that when he lets off the button a second and a half later, right? This right here is the problem that gets most turbo racers, right? They're racing like this, and you cannot do that. You have to be able to say, if this guy wants to leave at 12 pounds, he just left too hot. If he wants to leave at 15, he left too low, right? Now, in this case, the thing that's determining how much power he's going to have when he lets off the button is basically the starter at the drag strip. Whenever the guy throws the switch or auto start or whatever happens, whenever that bulb comes down and this guy lets off the button, that's what determines how much power you have. So basically, you have a moving target, and that's no way to drag race anything. Whether it's blower, nitrous, turbo, whatever. Well, like I said, this is a problem that's kind of peculiar to turbocharged cars. But luckily for you, you're, in my opinion, kind of in the golden era of this, because a lot of this stuff has been worked out. It's much easier to handle this problem nowadays than it used to be, right? The technology, boost controllers are better, converters are better, fuel injection's way better, way more sophisticated, and probably the biggest thing is just know-how. There's lots of guys that know how to do this that you can talk to, whether it be me or whatever. A lot of guys that know how to do this, and like I say, until you can do this, don't go to the racetrack. You're wasting your time. All right, now let's look at some stuff that looks a little more indicative of what we're trying to do. All right, example A here. I think this is beer money, right? Now this is a no prep car. We're leaving very low boosts. So all right, if you look here, we're stuttering at say 3750, 3800 or so. Where do you think? Okay, this is another thing, right? When you're up on the chip, your two-step, your launch RPM needs to be fairly flat, right? We don't want to see big jagged stuff, because once again, depending on when you let off the button, you're changing how that converter acts when this thing's jumping from say 4,000 to 35 in a big jump. You don't want that. You want it tight up on the converter so that it's consistent and it's going to do the same thing. The converter's going to react consistently when you let off the button, right? So that's another side of this that you need to keep in mind. Let me turn this off. We don't need that. So in this case, you'll see we go up. This is very common that you'll see a little, I call it the regulation point, where it'll push the gate open. What's happening here is your exhaust pressure gases and your dome pressure gases are kind of equalizing. And what happens at this point is this overpowers the dome, the valve a little bit. It pushes it up. You'll see a dome pressure increase. So your dome pressure go up, right? And usually, to compensate that, you'll see a boost vent solenoid. There it is. As soon as it sees it go up too high, our vent solenoid opens up to dump some of that pressure to get the dome back to our target of 17 in this case. This has a differently calibrated sensor, so that's 7. Don't pay attention to that 17 number. But our target in this case is 17, I guess. And it gets back to that point and regulates, right? And what happens is our gate opens, and then we regulate the boost exactly at 6.97 pounds, right? It's moving hardly at all. So in other words, when we let off the button, we're going to leave from 3,800 at just under 7 pounds. Right here, if we let off the button right here, the same. If we let off the button right here, the same. This is a controlled part of the tune-up. You have to have this. You have to be able to do this, right? And for a lot of your kind of regular drag race type guys or whatever, this is, if you understand the principles, it's really not that hard to do. At some point, maybe we'll talk about some of the voodoo that we do on the more complicated cars to maybe generate a lot of boost at relatively low RPM. Sometimes things get complicated. We can talk about that at a later date. But for today, I wanted you to understand the principle here. Like I say, we see this thing pop open. Sometimes you see this, sometimes you don't. But it's very common. And then we regulate. 7 pounds, right? Now, I need to be able to change that, right? I need to be able to do this before I go to the racetrack, preferably, right? If I want to, the next pass, I want to try to leave at 8. All right, well, I need to practice that at home. Can I get 8? And the biggest thing that affects this, whether you can or can't, at a given RPM level, is the atmosphere, right? As the air changes, this can get easier or more difficult. And it can also, especially on the alcohol cars, really change the power released when you let off the button, right? So a good way to keep track of this, what really matters, the boost is just a good indicator of how much power you're trying to target, right? But sometimes an even better indicator in some ways can be, let me move this over here, can be, let's look at this, fuel flow. Here's fuel. All right, same thing. You want this to be level, right? So it's hovering between 520, 510 or so pounds per hour of fuel flow, right? That basically correlates to X amount of horsepower, whatever that may be. Let's say we're leaving the line with 700 horsepower, whatever that is, right? So it's a good way to keep track of how much power we're leaving the line with, right? So that number may change at the same boost level, but maybe way better air, right? As that improves, that may change things. But so the fuel flow is a good way to keep track of how much power you're generating on the starting line. But like I say, you need to be able to run this up and down beforehand, right? So that when you go to the track, you don't have to, hopefully, mess with it as much. You already know how to get here, how to get there, what you need to do. But if you can't do either one of those things beforehand, you're wasting your time, in my opinion. All right, let's look at, what is this? All right. This is Cletus. This is mullet. All right, I don't know. I think it's from the latest Sick Summer thing. Just a test, right? So in this case, we're leaving 10.3, 10.4. And once we're up there, we're hanging out right there. We ain't moving, right? Then on this car, we're coming up, chipping higher and dropping down, right? But once we're here, like I say, once again, if you look at fuel flow, we are right there. We're not moving. We're going to leave at that point, right? And if I want to leave, burn another 30 pounds of fuel per hour, I can do that. I know how to do that, right? And it's important that you do, right? Another thing on some of the more advanced cars that can be excellent in this department is turbo shaft speed. That can be a really good indicator of the same things. So anyhow, for today, that's probably enough for today. I just want you to understand how unbelievably important this is. Like this is the reason that a lot of times you'll see turbo guys struggle especially if they're newer to turbocharging or whatnot. And I bet you if you were to ask any of your top tier tuners, what's the most important thing for a turbocharged drag race car, power management wise, they would probably all agree, without even thinking twice, that this is it, right? Because it is crucial that you be able to generate the same amount of however much power you want to generate on the starting line every time repeatedly, right? It's not that difficult a lot of times. Sometimes it is, but in most cases it's not that difficult, and we have tools in the toolbox nowadays to do it. Or you can talk to a tuner or somebody that can help you out in this department. But like I say, once again, unless you can do this, I wouldn't go to the racetrack until you can. But like the good thing about it is you can practice this at home, at the shop, whatever, without going to the racetrack. You can work on this. Well, anyhow, that's enough for today. Like, share, subscribe. The merch link I'll put in the description. We'll see you later. Whatever. Who cares?
Can you do it good?